Welcome to the first episode of Real to Real with L.A.M.E. Your hosts are
Hi, I'm Lex. I use any pronouns.
I'm Ava. I use any pronouns as well.
I'm Michaela. I use she, her pronouns.
I'm Esther. I also use she, her pronouns.
In this episode, we're going to be discussing Shiva Baby, written and directed by Emma Seligman. Yeah. The basic plot summary or synopsis is Danny is a college student. She is presently a sugar baby of a man named Max, who is... Later on, we figure out he's married, but the plot of the movie is they're going to a Shiva. The Shiva is for Danny's uncle's second wife's sister. It's a really convoluted way of just saying nobody important. And it's the turn of events of the sugar daddy showing up with his wife and daughter, and her ex-girlfriend, Danny's ex-girlfriend being there, ex-girlfriend being Maya, and just the downfall of the Shiva.
Yeah.
I got just chronologically, I have the first point being the interior decorating of Max's. We later find out that it's not Max's apartment, it's his wife Kim's apartment, because she's the one actually making the money. The interior design being very modern and contemporary, as opposed to when we walk into the Shiva house and it being this very coastal grandma kind of vibe where it's really eccentric, a lot of colors, a lot of textures happening, and just the stark difference in production design's choice to like very much separate the two.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. Something that I noticed right off the bat was that the car, which kind of goes hand in hand with the settings as they're pulling up to the house, and the placement of the cardboard on the back of the car, like towards the trunk, it kind of shows like their financial situation, which like juxtaposes what you said about this fancy apartment that she's in with her sugar daddy. And so it kind of shows like where she's coming from and where he's coming from at the same time.
Yeah. I think it's also interesting that it's set up at the very beginning that this van is a mess.
Yeah.
That it comes back later on to like be a pain in the ass.
Yeah, it's like full circle.
It's like a real full circle, like being introduced to this moment and coming back to it at the end, which I think is like something that occurs a lot in the film.
Mm-hmm.
Something I wanted to mention was like at the beginning with Max, Danielle has her hair down, but like at the Shiva, she has her hair tied up in this like really tight bun, which kind of shows like the tightness that she feels like in this Shiva, and like maybe the anxiety that she might be feeling. And it's like a contrast for like from her ex-girlfriend Maya, whose hair is down and she might feel a little bit more confident going to this funeral.
Yeah, especially because like Maya is on the track to be a lawyer. She's in this like really good position, and then it's as opposed to Danny, who's there and it's really uncomfortable because people keep asking her like, what's your plan after college? And she's like, I have some interviews lined up, which we know is a lie from the very beginning, but it's like the looseness of Maya's hair contrasting the tightness of the uncomfortability. Like Maya is in an environment where she's comfortable, she goes to temple, she's like the golden girl in the Jewish community, and Danny is the polar opposite in that contrast.
Her hair is actually straightened, unlike her naturally curly hair, when she is hooking up with Max, and it's kind of similar to how like she took basically Maya's like course that she was taking. She said like, oh yeah, I'm being a lawyer to Max, and she had her hair straightened like Maya. Like she just like, it's basically like she's so jealous of Maya that she's basically taking parts of her and like displaying herself as that to somebody that she could manipulate into believing that, which is really interesting to show like how she's really like insecure of like herself and not feeling like she's really good enough. And we see that a lot throughout the film, that she feels like she's just like not good enough. She's getting nowhere in life, and that she's like almost like she's still a child.
Yeah, I agree with that. We can definitely see throughout the film how or like within how her hair changes and as well as her costume. I feel like costume is a huge part of this movie, and we can kind of see as she breaks down more and more, her costume gets more and more messy. And like, things just keep going wrong, and as she's questioning herself, saying like, are you proud of me? She's asking her mom, are you proud of me? Do you wish I was doing something different? Like, I'm not your little baby anymore. I just want you to be proud of me. Like, we can see how things just keep falling apart from there.
Adding on to that, like the costuming choice, like having her wear a white shirt is definitely a choice, because like when the coffee spills on her, like you can see the stain for the rest of the movie, compared to like if she was wearing like a dark shirt, like the stain wouldn't like be there. So I think the stain, like having her spill the coffee on herself, it kind of shows how disheveled she's becoming more and more over the course of the film.
I think also another point to mention is that the other film, when we see like her full like distressed look, you can see like her eyeliner and all of her makeup like it's running underneath her eyes, her hair is all disheveled. You got the coffee stain, and something that was really is that near the start of the film, she's wearing her black jacket over her white top, but then the black jacket ends up like just coming off after like at the point after the bathroom, and we just don't see her wearing that again. If that black jacket would have still been on her, the coffee stain that you mentioned wouldn't have been like as prominent, because the jacket would have covered it, or it would have just gotten on the jacket. So
I
I think
do.
that,
Sorry.
yeah.
I do think she does actually end up putting the jacket back on. She gets the coffee stain and she's like, I'm gonna put my jacket back on. I think also costume wise, there's also the tights that she tears. And then like the outfit like becomes like so much more inappropriate for Shiva as soon as those tights come off, and you don't even realize how important those tights are to that outfit for being like conservative for a Shiva until they're off, and you're like, whoa, that is a lot happening in front of me right now.
It doesn't help that she also was wearing a bright red bra underneath her white shirt.
Yeah.
It's like it's also just like showing that like despite her like wearing like the outfit looks modest at first, but then when you get deeper into the outfit, you're just seeing like how like her femininity is showing more prominently.
Going back to the point that you said about the jacket coming off, I think that can also like represent a lot about how she was feeling during the time, because I feel like as she took the jacket off and she was being more like, that scene in the bathroom or like afterwards as well, um, she was becoming like a little bit more drunk, a little bit more confident, but also just like I think that showed like her vulnerability, almost as if like she didn't have anything to cover her anymore, fully just a complete mess, and like that kind of reflected with the shirt choice.
I also found it, I don't know if this is necessarily costume, and I know that's kind of what we're talking about, but just like kind of move a little bit more into mise-en-scène. Um, her phone, I know that her phone is definitely like a scripted part, but I think it's like it's an older version of a phone. It's also like the case of the phone is really beaten up. It's like a Galaxy case, but like it looks like it's falling apart. There's like things that come off of it. I just thought that was a really choice, because like she is being paid by Max. Like she is getting money from Max. Like she could afford luxuries that she isn't getting for herself. Like I think even her clothes don't look expensive. Like nothing about her screams that like she's getting a second income.
I think though, if she did use that money to wear like all these luxurious clothes and have like the phone like look nicer, like her parents would probably be like, where are you getting all that money from? Like the babysitting gig that you're supposed to be doing? Like so even like the bracelet, like they mentioned the bracelet. She was like, oh yeah, you guys gave it to me in like high school or whatever. But it was like too expensive for them.
Yeah, that's a good point. I also saw like moving aside from Danny's wardrobe for a second, the wardrobe around her was also noteworthy, because I feel like a lot of the other people's looks were kind of iconic for their character. So like for example, I saw like the two gossipy women who
I think their
Catherine
names,
and
yeah, or Catherine.
Catherine and Sheila, they showed up wearing, I remember in the first scene they showed up wearing one of them was wearing like very nice pearls and like these type of glasses, and then the other one was wearing like a suit jacket with like a ruffled shirt and stuff like that, and they're having a conversation about judging Danny and like judging the Max's wife, who had ended up coming. And so I think like that kind of tells about their personality as well. Like they're very uptight, very stuck up, and it kind of shows like what era they're in as well. So I thought that that was noteworthy. But also I wanted to point out like the color that the baby was wearing, which is red. The baby is wearing red the whole time, and the baby was constantly screaming. And so I feel like the red might represent something like chaos or anger within the story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
another person's like outfit was her father Joel. His outfit, he, despite it being like a place that's supposed to be like sad, and like most people, all people were like wearing black. They may have still had colors, but they were wearing black. He wasn't wearing any black at all. He had like a very colorful tie, and he was just wearing a tan overcoat, and like he just like had no black on whatsoever, and I feel like that just really speaks to his character really well.
I also had a note about his tie. Like, I thought that was like such a standout moment for me. It also like felt like my grandfather, like the only wardrobe he has, he like lives in Florida. He's like stereotypical, like very Jewish. Only wears neon green or neon orange. Like it's like such a stereotypical older man choice to like have this like bright, obnoxious color at an event that has nothing to do with you. Especially like a Shiva where you should be like sad and like depressed, and it's like he's wearing that bright tie, which really stood out to me as
It
well.
really shows to his like upbeat personality, and how he's always looking like the bright side, and he's always just being like he was constantly encouraging like, oh, you'll get somewhere in the future, don't worry, like you have so many job opportunities here, and like he was always just trying to be like encouraging and uplifting, and that really shows through like his like how he looks, how he presents himself.
I
Yeah,
also sorry.
yeah, you got it, you got it.
I also just like going back to like a lot of the moments I feel like with Joel, the dad, Danny's dad, they're in the entryway, and I just wanted to make a note of the white lilies that are funeral flowers. They're flowers that are used a lot to represent death in a lot of different communities. But those, like the van being cluttered, those coming back at the end, I do think it's a different vase of flowers, but there's still those white lilies and other flowers being the thing that shatters and being the like the crux of the entire movie, being these white flowers that symbolize death. Like, not that I think they symbolize the obviously their death literally, it's a Shiva, but also like the death of like this, like what could have been in Danny's head. Like once those flowers shatter, any hope of like continuing her relationship with Max is shattered. But I also think it's not necessarily a bad thing, because also like she's reconnected with Maya through this entire event. So like while it's the death of one thing, it's also kind of like the rebirth of another, which I think is also very Jewish thought process.
I also think it's just like a reminder that like, hey, like we're at a funeral, like we're at like this isn't like all happiness and stuff like that. Like it's just reminding us where we are in the setting that we're in.
I
Yeah.
agree. When she um when all the Jewish prayer books fell on the floor, and stuff like that, and she was kissing them and they were kind of like scattered all over. It was kind of like, it kind of represented like maybe like religious guilt or like just guilt in general, because she had destroyed this very, the flowers as well as like, the Jewish tradition of a Shiva. And so it kind of like might represent like what she could be and what she actually is. And like, she could be this, amazing Maya-like figure and be super Jewish and, actually babysit and, have a plan for her life. But instead, all of them are scattered around and she has no idea what she's doing.
Yeah, that's really emphasized throughout the movie, especially when everybody's like, "Oh, well, I thought you didn't go to like these Jewish events. I thought you didn't do this and that." And it's like she's just constantly feeling like more guilty throughout the film, and she keeps trying to make the excuse that she does do it, but everyone's like being like, "No, you don't. Like that doesn't sound like you."
Also, this was almost 100% not intentional, or was very intentional by the actress who plays Danny. At the very beginning, she's like, "No, I can't eat that. I'm a vegetarian," and I'm 100% sure this isn't the script, but she then, like, when she's panicking, goes over and grabs a bagel, spreads cream cheese on it, and then puts lox, which are not vegetarian at all, on it, and then she just like devours it, and it's this like really ironic moment where it's like, I'm really throwing everything out. I'm not gonna be anything that I'm telling these people I am. I'm not even really a vegetarian, which I thought
Yeah,
was like interesting.
I feel like the film is also just like one thing that's prominent is just like indulging yourself. Like she like even just like she indulges herself in food. Like food's a struggle for her, but she like will indulge herself in food when she's feeling overwhelmed and stressed. But another thing is that she indulges herself like by like giving in to like Max even after she finds out that like she has a wife and a child. She still wants him and she still indulges herself with him despite knowing that that's not like the correct thing to do. And like she indulges herself with like wine too. Like she keeps getting drunk throughout tonight and she's like just keeps drinking red wine. And it's just like she just keeps like taking everything she knows that she shouldn't and ignoring the things like the warning signs.
I definitely agree with that. I kind of want to talk about Max's wife, Kim, a little bit. Um, and the way that she looks is almost like entirely opposite to Danielle. Like she's older, she has a kid, she's blonde, her hair is down compared to Danielle, who has her hair tied up in a bun. Um, and it's like the exact opposite. They're like the exact opposite of each other, which I don't think is in the script, but it's definitely a choice to cast someone who looks the exact opposite of the protagonist and is actually the wife. And I also wanted to mention that they call her like a Shiksa princess, but isn't the actress like actually Jewish?
Yeah. The irony of her being called a shiksa, well, the actress who plays Kim is Jewish, and the actress who plays Danny, who is this supposed to be like this very Jewish girl, is not Jewish, is not lost on somebody who is paying attention. Just like another thing, just kind of going along with like some like oopsie daisies with like behind the scenes stuff. And maybe it was intentional, maybe it wasn't. But during a Shiva, you're not supposed to have any mirrors uncovered. So like when they go into the bathroom and the mirror is fully uncovered, that wouldn't happen at a real Shiva. And I don't know if that's an intentional choice so she can send Max her nudes, or an unintentional choice that just happened because somebody forgot to cover that mirror. Somebody forgot that all the mirrors had to be covered. But I just thought it was an interesting little point.
Yeah. Adding on to your point about the bathroom, I think the bathroom is a really important setting to look at because there's a lot of details in it that have to do with mise-en-scene. And so like I noticed a lot of the blue in the bathroom contrasts like the yellow lighting of outside, and like I often saw when people were going in there they would take a deep breath and like it was more calm because of the blue maybe, and that might like represent like calm in the middle of a storm. Like they're all in this very chaotic Shiva together, but once these people go to the bathroom it's like they're taking a break. But I also noticed that the bathroom looks very old fashioned. Like I noticed that there was like pink toilet paper set up, and that there was like a floral little like blanket that was covering one of the tables in the bathroom, and that there was like an older pink pair of sunglasses of glasses and like an old bottle of perfume. And going back to what we said in the beginning, like it really contrasts like the modern apartment style of Max and like the time that they're in, and it's very like eccentric to be in there.
It's also really that you mentioned and how like people like took a deep breath when they were in there and relaxed because when she was feeling overwhelmed, she did go to the bathroom, and that's where she breathed. And I think that's like when she like became confident in her femininity again. At first, she was like really insecure, and like when she was in the bathroom, she was really confident and she was looking at herself, judging herself, and then that's when she decided to take the pictures. And just like the atmosphere of the room itself like made her feel comfortable enough and confident in herself again. And then when she leaves the bathroom, she's instantly insecure once again. Like she was confident when taking those pictures, but then as soon as she leaves the bathroom, that comforting area with all like the cool colors, she like gets hit outside with all like these like just like she sees the wife, which was made her even more insecure. But it's just like it's a really big contrast of like that bathroom to like the outside world.
Yeah. Sorry, going back to something that Lex said earlier about, or Michaela said earlier about the drinking of wine. I just want to mention the cups that the wine is in because they're like so quintessentially Jewish, like Shabbat dinner glasses. Like they're not even like, they're like those crystal glasses that you're not supposed to touch. You're not allowed to use them unless it's a special occasion, which is like kind of carried throughout like the space they're eating in, where there's like plates that are put up on the wall. And I feel like just like production wise, there's a lot of textures happening. Like there's a lot of like crocheted blankets, the curtains, for sure you can almost like feel the curtains. They're like that velvety, like with embroidery. It's like very grandparents' house.
Grandmother, yeah.
You also like get like little details into the family that lives there's life through like there's this one photo that's like so random, but it's a family portrait and it's a young girl with her mom and dad. I'm guessing, but the dad is wearing a military uniform, so like you get this like little background of like the military family, but you don't, there's no payoff to knowing that. It's just there if you notice it.
Yeah, going back to like smaller details in the background of scenes um when Danny and Max go into the kitchen, and he says like, oh, we should end things. I noticed that like the kitchen is pretty messy. There's like a bunch of dishes in the sink and stuff like that, and like it's interesting because it's not a part of that more yellow lighting. It's very natural lighting from the window actually. And so I think it kind of like can remind us of like, okay, there's actual mess going on here. Like this is an actual house, but also like this is an actual Shiva. And like there's a lot of other people here as well who have like eaten and made a mess and like, they're in a very real situation. And I think that shows throughout the scene, like with the different placements of things that are in the background while they're talking about ending things.
Yeah. I think also talking about the natural light, there's the scene where she has her last panic attack when her mom, and I'm pretty sure it's Shiva, who's the mom's friend, Debbie's friend. They're like touching her and saying, I can't remember what they're saying, but they're talking about her being a baby. And right before that scene, the curtains in that room are closed. And it's very intentional shot. They show the curtains being closed, and then there's this really warm, almost hot, warm light that occurs in the room.
Yeah.
It's obviously from the lamps. And there's, I don't know if you guys have noticed this about like a lot of the movies in the past couple of weeks, but there's always like 25 lamps in every room. There's too many lamps. Why do you need that many lamps? But it creates, yeah, for the lighting. It honestly a lot of the time makes it feel almost more claustrophobic, even though you're making the room brighter. You're taking up the
That's
space.
kind of the point though, is that it's supposed the like everything feeling so like constricted, it makes everything that's happening feel more chaotic because it's just in such a tight space that with 50 things happening at once, everything's just so overwhelming.
And I feel like that's like a very intentional moment that the set designers like having it be like this very eccentric old woman house.
Yeah.
Like it's going to be claustrophobic. And when you add like it feels like there's at least 100 people in this space. There's not enough space for everyone. They have those uncomfortable plastic chairs that as soon as I saw them, I'm like, that's a choice. It's a choice to have those.
So
yeah.
you mentioned like that in that conversation they were talking about when like Danielle was a baby. And I just wanted to mention like I can't remember, one of you guys mentioned like how there was a scene that there was like the child paintings or drawings in the back, and it was
About to
framed that, yeah, if you want to talk about that, Michaela.
Yeah. So her mother, Debbie, and her mother's friend Sheila, they're talking in front of her and she's kind of cornered in a corner where she can't get out and she's getting like really overwhelmed. And at one point her mother notices something on her chin and she tries starting to like wipe it off her chin like as you would do for a baby. And in the background you can see like little children's paintings and pictures that are drawn, and it really just like sets the childish atmosphere and how she feels like she's being infantilized.
I agree with that. I think a really common thing in this movie is like using colors and using like symbolism as a way to like show the mood. And I 100% agree with that. I think like another point to note is the use of like background objects, as you said. Like there was this one detail where I noticed where Danny is talking to Max, and there are red curtains that are kind of like framing her body. Going back to what I said earlier about the color red on the baby, um, like the fact that she's standing in the middle of them and she's also like talking very passive aggressively to Max in front of Maya. I think it shows like her anger, her chaos, like all of these little background details that you would have never noticed can like add to the tone of what's happening in the scene.
Also, I also want to mention I did note that in my notes as well. And then another thing is there's a lot of red lamps, and like there's like several instances where she's like one time when they're all sitting on the couch and she walks over to the three sitting on the couch. She like walks over and as she's like making comments towards Max's wife, Kim, yeah, to Kim, and she's like, oh yeah, like I think I might have met him there, or maybe not. Like it just shows like how she's like trying to mess with Max and get power over him, and you can see that red lamp behind her again, and it just showed like the red is just like showing like how she like it just keeps coming back to that. Yeah. One more thing I would like to discuss is how this film I feel relates to the last film we watched, Le Bonnier. The reason why I think this is because I feel like this film that we just watched is very like feminist as well, similar to how Le Bonnier was, because we see a lot of her like being confident in her body, and like I mentioned earlier, like the red bra, like it's a bright red bra worn under that shirt. And like it just shows like how she's like confident with her femininity, but also at the same time she tries to hide it a lot. And I feel like, yeah, I just wanted to like see what your guys' opinions are and seeing like if you also think that those two are like very similar, because I thought they were.
I almost feel like it connects to Take Shelter more, like the paranoia feeling that this film gave me. Like I feel like relates closer to Take Shelter. Like it was, I think Take Shelter I like didn't have like any really positive things to feel about it, but this was like such a viscerally uncomfortable experience. Like I could like feel the uncomfortability, and I think that in Le Bonheur it almost felt like more passive, but this felt more like you're there, you're feeling everything that these people are feeling.
Yeah, I get that.
This film is more filmed like a horror movie, but the horrors are how anxiety inducing going to social gatherings like these are.
Yeah. And I also think just not to connect back to color in a way, but I just wanted to mention that the windows in the house are all stained glass. So even when it's getting natural light, it's being filtered through like these warm colors and tones when it comes in, which I think was also a really interesting choice. Obviously, I think if they're filming it in a real house, those are already set in stone. You're not going to replace the windows for a film. But I think that probably was in the minds of the people who were looking for the house that the film would be shot in.
Yeah, definitely.
I just thought those were like a nice touch.
Does anyone have any like last minute topics or
Closing thoughts?
We're good, honestly.
I think I'm good.
Okay, well that wraps up our very first video of Reels to Reels with L.A.M.E. Yeah. So tune in next time.
To be determined what movie.
Yeah, to
Yeah,
be
to
determined.
determine what movie next time, but there will be another one. Don't worry.
All right.
Okay.